with you in this community that means so much to us personally. So much to what Texas was able to do in 2018. And means so much for what we will be able to do for this country in 2020. It's an honor to be introduced by Hannah, somebody who's attending the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And I want to tell you a story from my hometown of El Paso, Texas. I wasn't expecting so many people from El Paso, Texas, but thank you for being here. You may or may not know the name Thelma White. She graduated from Douglas High School, the all-black public high school in El Paso, Texas, in 1954, because it was the only high school that she was allowed to attend in El Paso in 1954. She had the audacity and the courage to try to enroll at Texas Western College, and because of her race, she was denied entry to that publicly funded institution of higher education. So, she enlisted the help of a little-known attorney named Thurgood Marshall. And they took that case to the federal bench of R.E. Thomason, and not only did her courage in that case and Thurgood Marshall integrate higher education in Texas, it struck down the segregation clause in our Constitution. There's nothing wrong with this country right now. We cannot make right with this country right now. And it's going to be the people of Texas, it's going to be the people of Houston, Texas, who lead the way. I'll tell you, because I have spent so much time with you, this is our third visit to TSU in little more than a year. And I remember the first visit. We were having a town hall, a slightly smaller crowd, maybe 50 people at that first one. And we were taking questions from anybody who wanted to ask a question, ideas, suggestions, guidance from anyone who wanted to offer it. And a young woman named Nena Umelo stood up and asked me about the high cost of higher education. She reminded us that there's $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt in this country today, and the average graduating senior has about $40,000 on their back. They will have to pay that back at some point in their life because it's the one kind of debt that you take with you until you paid it off or until you're in the grave. There's more outstanding student loan debt in this country than there is credit card debt in this country. So Nena stood up and she said, what if we stopped digging the hole? What if we made sure that people could go to community college or a 4-year public institution without taking on a dime of debt? And then for those already carrying some of this student loan debt, what if we refinanced that debt at lower rates, made it a little bit more affordable, and then if you're willing to dedicate your life or some part of your life to public service in a VA where there are 49,000 funded, authorized, but unfilled positions, which mean that veterans who came back from Vietnam, who are going to come back tomorrow from Afghanistan and Iraq, wait in lines that are not days or weeks, but sometimes months, sometimes never get that care. There are 20 veterans a day, every single day in this country, who will die by their own hand, the majority of them unable, or for whatever reason, unwilling, perhaps because of the lines, to get into those VAs. If you're willing to be that psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist or social worker who will make the life or death difference for that veteran, then I want to wipe clean your student loan debt and allow you to live to your full potential. Just as I was coming in, I saw Rhonda Hart and her son Tyler. Where is Rhonda? Right over here in the Cape. I remember not too long to those horrific shootings at Santa Fe High School, meeting Rhonda, her father, her son Tyler. They just lost Kimberly, killed in that shooting. I met the Curry family, whose daughter, when asked on the day of that shooting whether she was surprised that a gunman came into that school and opened fire on her fellow students, she said, no, I wasn't surprised. I expected that it would happen sooner or later. I met Bree, I met Marcel, and all of them brought solutions to the table. They reminded me, as those moms who demand action remind me, that in those states that have adopted universal background checks, we've seen a 50% reduction in gun violence. Let's adopt them in every single state in this country for everyone. And then, let's ensure that weapons designed, engineered, sold to the United States military with the sole purpose of killing people as effectively, as efficiently, and as great a number as possible are kept on the battlefield and are no longer sold into our communities. I remember being in Kashmir Gardens with Keith Downey, who's the president of that neighborhood association. This was more than 1 year after Harvey. As we toured that community, we passed one library after another that was still shut down. Of the 5 libraries in that community, only 1 had reopened. And on almost every other utility pole, we saw these yellow signs saying, sell your home. Folks who had worked and invested and tried so hard to build wealth for themselves and pass it on to their kids were selling their homes for pennies on the dollar because it was the third 500-year flood in just the last 5 years in that community in Southeast Texas. We, the people of Texas, and you, the people of Houston, and those residents of Kashmir Gardens understand climate change better than just about anybody else in this country. And Keith said something to me that day that has stuck with me ever since. He said, long before Harvey, a storm hit this neighborhood. He said, try being able to find a healthy meal in walking distance from any one of these homes. Beto, I want you to see how many check cashing places and payday lenders there are, and how few places to get a healthy meal or put a nutritious meal in front of your kid. As we were passing Kashmir Elementary, I had to assume, given what he had told me about the neighborhood, this had to be a school that was really struggling. And he said, no. In fact, this is the bright spot in Kashmir Gardens. There are kids who do not have a home, will be sleeping on a different couch every single night of this week. In fact, there's a kid being raised by his grandmother in the back of his car. It's parked in front of the home that they used to have that no longer exists. But when that kid walks in to Kashmir Elementary, there is a teacher there with a smile on her face, welcoming him in, making him feel like he's in the right place. There are wraparound mental health care, primary health care services for those kids. We understand that for him to be able to live to his full potential, we have to make an investment in him now. And you in Houston have taught me the importance of investing in public education. You have warned me that nearly half of the public educators in this state, that's the school bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, the custodians, those who are the nurses and social workers and librarians, and yes, the instructors in front of those kids, on average are working 2 or 3 jobs in this state right now. I want you to just have one job. I want you to have every minute of every day focused on those children before you, unlocking their lifelong love of learning. When we do that, there's no stopping those kids, and there is no stopping this country. You've also shared with me that we have a schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline in this country. And it begins not in high school, as I might have imagined. It begins at 5 years old in kindergarten, where a child of color is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled as a white child in the same classroom. So if we really want to address this, let's do 2 things. Because in that kindergarten classroom on the first day, there are some kids who are already 10 months back in reading apprehension, 12 months back in math. Let's start universally every child's education at pre-K without exception. And then let's recruit more teachers who look like the students before them in those classrooms. In this state, I got to meet with your sheriff, Ed Gonzalez. I got to go to the Harris County Jail just as a visitor. The Harris County Jail is the largest mental health care institution in the state of Texas. 28 million people. And we are forcing those with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and depression to get arrested on purpose at your expense, $110 a night, every night that they're locked up, to pay for their food and their clothing, a roof over their head, a prescription to a psychotropic medication that will temporarily, maybe, make life bearable for them. For a fraction of the cost, we could invest in guaranteed, high-quality, universal health care for every single American. And we can ensure that universal means in a country that is losing too many people to diabetes, to the flu, to curable cancers in the year 2019, in a country where we are at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color. Universal health care means every single one of us sees a primary care provider. Universal health care means every one of us can get mental health care help. And universal health care means every woman makes her own decisions about her own body. And we can do this. In an economy where right now one job is not enough, and it's not just those educators. It's people from all walks of life in all communities who are struggling. When I talk about those kids who are 10 and 12 months back in reading and math apprehension, it might be because their mothers are working 2 and 3 jobs and do not have the time to read to their kids before the first night of school, or any night of school for that matter. We must not only wage the fight for $15 an hour, we must win that fight. And we must make sure that instead of allowing our unions to be diminished, that we strengthen them. That every graduating senior from high school is not just college ready for a debt-free higher education, but is career ready, making sure that they have the skills, have learned that trade that allow them to have respect and dignity and purpose and function in their lives, as well as a real paycheck. Apprenticeships at every age, not just those graduating from high school, but those moms returning to the workforce after having raised their kids, those people whose jobs have been automated out of existence. When we strengthen unions in this country, we grow the middle class. We make sure that more people can earn a living. And if we are serious about this idea of justice for all in the United States of America, in a country that holds itself out as being founded on the premise that we were all created equal to equal opportunity in this country, let's make sure that we look squarely in the face the largest prison population per capita on the planet today, one disproportionately comprised of African Americans, Mexican Americans, and people of color. So many there for nonviolent drug crimes. And though we know that Americans of all races use illegal drugs at the same rate, only some are more likely than others to be arrested, to do time, to be forced to check a box on every employment application form, making it less likely that they're going to get that job. Only some will now be denied federally backed student loans, making it nearly impossible for them to improve themselves through higher education. There's a few things that we've got to do. One, end the prohibition on marijuana. No one should be doing time. Two, for every one of our fellow Americans arrested for possession of a substance that is legal in more than half the states of the union, expunge their records. Make sure that they can move ahead in their lives. And then Houston, we're going to follow your lead. Let's end cash bail. Let's end for-profit prisons. And let us once and for all end the war on drugs. All of this becomes possible when all of us show up. And Houston, Texas, you showed the way in 2018. Before that year, Texas ranked 50th in voter turnout, dead last. Not because we like our democracy any less than anyone else in any other state. We were drawn that way. Our state legislature drew people out of a congressional district solely based on their race, their country of national origin. We really did this. We made sure that some people's votes counted for less than others, and predictably, fewer people showed up. We instituted voter ID laws that were on their face racist and sought to keep people out. You can use your ID to carry a firearm in this state to prove who you are at the ballot box. You cannot use your ID at TSU to prove who you are at the ballot box. Here's what we need. A new Voting Rights Act signed into law so that every single one of us can vote. We're going to end the practice of members of Congress choosing their voters. No more gerrymandering in this state or in the United States. We're going to get big, unaccountable money out of our politics. No PACs, no corporations, no special interests, all people. And we will institute same-day voter registration and automatic voter registration for every single American. But you, in 2018, gave us a preview of what democracy in this country can look like, because though we had been 50th in the country, not only did we win votes from Republicans and independents and expand the number of Democrats who voted in a midterm election, young voter turnout up 500%. You made it happen. And though we did not win the Senate race, down I'll tell you what. Thanks to you, there are 2 seats in the United States House of Representatives long held by Republicans, thought to be too safely red for any Democrat to compete. But today, Lizzie Panel Fletcher sits in one of those, and Colin Allred sits in the other. And in Houston, Texas, you elected 17 African American women to judicial positions. literally, in this state's largest city, in this country's most diverse city, literally changing the face of criminal justice in 2018. That's why I am so grateful that I get to be here with you and tell you that I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. All of you, everyone in America. Absolutely. We're going to make sure that we meet every single one of our aspirations, not by half measure and not by half the country. It won't be Democrats versus Republicans, big cities versus small towns. At this very divided, highly polarized, hyper-partisan moment, what this country needs is for us to come together. Whatever our differences, wherever you live, whoever you love, to whomever you pray, and for whoever you voted in the last election, that cannot define us. Let's agree that before we are anything else, we are Americans first. If we run this campaign in this way, we will be able to bring people, and just people, human beings, Americans, no corporations, no PACs, no special interests, together, not only to win the nomination, not only to defeat Donald Trump, as important as that is, but we will bring this country together to achieve every single one of our aspirations. We will no longer be known by our fear and by our divisions. Instead, we will distinguish ourselves by our aspirations, our ambitions, the resolve, the determination, the creativity, the service, and sacrifice that will allow us to accomplish them. Are you with me on this? Are you in for the fight? Well, I am with you, and Houston and TSU, I am so grateful for the opportunity to run to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.